Reverse by Black K Cat. Chapter 43. Quantis. Given who he's sharing a room with, Kurama honestly probably should have expected to wake up with someone looming over him, one hand on his foot and the other clutching a shinobi sandal with clear mischief in mind. Automatically no fool after so many years of sharing headspace with Kana'a's resident trickster, Kurama kicks out hard! Shisui goes flying backwards with a high-pitched yelp, slamming into the wall, and Kurama snarls as he rolls out of bed and to his feet. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demands, glaring at the Uchiha and half tempted to actually set him on fire! Shoo! Shisui wheezes, waving the sandal he's still holding, and the idiot is actually laughing! He's laughing so hard he can't even breathe, and Kurama hopes he really does choke on it. 1 night of peace! Is that too much to ask? A quick glance out the window shows no signs of morning being anywhere close to arriving, and Kurama growls low and rumbling. It's tempting to kick Shisui out of the room and dive right back into bed, but Kurama is fairly certain Shisui follows his Naruto's train of thought in regards to pranks. If it doesn't work the first time, try again. Try harder! And regardless of the irritation he causes, Kurama knows Kakashi won't be all the pleased with him if he actually murders the little brat. Thought of Kakashi is enough to make up Kurama's mind. He snatches up his blankets and pillows, shoots Sui a lick that promises retribution, and stalks out of the room, pointedly slamming the door behind him. He gets another burst of laughter from the Uchiha, who is clearly insane! But as long as Kurama is out of the line of fire, he doesn't give a damn. 3 rooms down on the left, and he slams through that door too, not in any frame of mind to be polite. From the bed, there's a jerk, a twist, and Kakashi surfaces from the depths of his mattress, kunai in hand and Sharingan spinning. Half an instant before he can lunge out of bed, his gaze catches on Kurama and he aborts with an awkward jerk, almost spilling over the edge. Kurama? He demands, clearly bewildered. Put that thing away. Kurama tells him grumpily, throwing his blankets into an empty corner and following them down. That Uchiha is a menace, and I'm not sleeping with the creepy kid. Deal with it. There's a long pause, and then Kakashi rubs a hand over his eyes. Shisui, will I need to put pranked up Biju on his death report? Because I'd like some advance notice so I can leave the village before Sarutobi sees it. Kurama barks out a laugh, stretching out on his makeshift bed and shoving his pillow into shape. Not yet, but if he tries to stuff sandals on my feet again, I make no promises. Or you could wear sandals like the rest of the world, Kakashi offers, dry as dust. Screw you, Kakashi huffs. It's not like a pebble is going to hurt me, so why should I bother? Kakashi opens his mouth, but freezes for a long moment. He says in a peculiar voice, Shisui tried to make the Kyubi no Kitsune wear shoes. I'd eat him. Kurama agrees helpfully, grinning to show teeth. Except in this body, you've kind of got to cook your food first, and that's a hassle. There's another long pause. Finally, Kakashi snorts, lowering himself back down onto the mattress. The amusing thing is that you're not the first person I've heard threaten to eat him. I'm also fairly sure you won't be the last. The face Kurama makes is somewhere between offended and disgusted. If it was Tenzo, keep it to yourself. I don't want to know anything about their sex life. Ever. Amusingly, Kakashi's expression twists to almost match his, and he makes a quiet sound of deep denial. He doesn't quite pull the pillow up over his head, but the thought is definitely there. Stop! My team members are all innocent and pure as the driven snow. It's just banter! The last time Kurama saw someone look at someone else the way Shisui looks at Tenzo, it was Ino looking at Sakura 2 weeks before she finally jumped her. Still, he's not about to burst Kakashi's bubble just now, not when doing it later offers a heck of a lot more chances for amusement. Whatever you say, he offers instead, snorting softly. Kakashi doesn't quite look at him, but the feeling of his attention fixed on the side of Kurama's head doesn't waver. Not really interested enough to push, Kurama counts down from 60 in his head, and just as he reaches 10, Kakashi says quietly, You're very human. That's definitely not what Kurama was expecting to hear. For a long heartbeat, Kurama keeps his eyes fixed on the ceiling, steady and unwavering. Then slowly he breathes out, closing them and trying not to think of Naruto. His Naruto lost to him, pulling him back to his feet. I had a good role model. Probably the best. The one who sent you back. Kakashi's voice is lazy, but there's a thread of sharpness buried underneath it. You want to do this now? Kurama asks, faintly annoyed. The question gives him a quiet sense of amusement. You're the one who decided to camp out in my room. Yeah, to escape your pet idiot. Kurama snaps. Not for an interrogation. Another pause, carefully pointed. Kurama glances over, not quite able to help himself, and meets Kakashi's firm stare. Convince me, Kakashi tells him as mild as summer morning. Give me a reason I shouldn't turn you over to the Hokage the second we get back to Konoha. Kurama bristles. Besides the fact that you can't. Kakashi weighs that, then inclines his head, surrendering the point. Then convince me you're not a threat, he says instead. Without any remorse, Kurama bares his teeth at the man. Screw you, Kakashi. I'm the biggest threat you've ever faced, and if you forget that, it's your own fault. I could level your precious village in less than an hour. But you won't. Kakashi is still watching him, unmoved by the show of temper. If anything, there's almost a spark of amusement in his eyes. Damn the man, Kurama thinks, deflating just a little, and he huffs and rolls onto his back again. I won't, he agrees sourly. My best friend loves the place, and all of this is for him. That's not going to change. Weeks of chasing, Kakashi laments dryly, dragging the blankets up over his ears. And we could have skipped all of it. Hey, asshole, I'm not the one who tried to drive a Chidori through someone's chest. Because they went in for a hug, Kurama snaps. I apologized, Kakashi points out, sounding entirely unbothered by the accusation. Your best friend? Kurama sighs, deliberately put up on, but can't help a small, faintly crooked smile. Yeah, he's the one who sent me back. Kaguya was almost on us, so he and his friend did the ritual. She found them right at the end and killed them, but she was too late. And I'm going to make sure she never has another chance. A breath, and he drags his thoughts away from darkness and blood-stained chakra rods towards sunshine and brighter days. The sage created the 9 of us, but it wasn't until him that I really felt like someone. Kakashi's eyes are on him again like a physical weight in the dimness. Do you regret it? Attacking Konoha? The snarl that tears from Kurama's throat is involuntary, but instant, edged with the malice he's so familiar with. I didn't want to attack Konoha in the first place. Obisho has Madara's eye, which can control Biju. He's the one who broke the seal on Kushina and forced me into the village. You really think I'd have chosen to stick around a village full of people with Funjutsu training? That was just asking to get sealed away again. A pause, and maybe it's that thought of little Naruto is so close. But he adds more quietly. I regret that Naruto had to grow up without parents because I was there. Even if I didn't choose it. Kakashi doesn't say anything, but that's fine. He's not the one Kurama was saying it for in the first place. It's something he never told his Naruto, though he's fairly certain it was understood by the end. Still, it's one small bit of regret that itches at him, and Kurama thinks that he understands so much better now what Naruto meant when he lamented all the things he would never say to Sasuke. You loved him? Kakashi asks, only directed at Kurama as an afterthought. Your friend. He shifts a little, almost sitting up, but turns his face away at the last moment instead. How does someone teach a monster how to love? Kurama laughs a little, entirely unable to help it. It's not something you can teach, idiot. I learned on my own and taught myself. It's finding someone who's worth learning for that's the hard part. There's no response to that, only silence. Kurama waits another handful of heartbeats for the conversation to continue before he decides that Kakashi's moral has dropped it and closes his eyes, evening out his breathing. As he drops down into sleep, he thinks of Naruto, young and old, thinks of learning, and a hand in his own, pulling him up. He dreams of sunlight and laughter and a warm wind fit to lift him right off the earth and into the sky, and sleeps peacefully through the night. Teach yourself, Kakashi thinks, listening to Kurama's steady breathing in the darkness. It sounds so simple, phrased like that, though he knows it couldn't have been. But Kakashi knew once what it was like to move on, move forward. He thinks of Minato, his words after Kakashi's father, after Obito, after Rin. Minato always talked about holding on to the past but not letting it be a chain, using it as a catalyst instead of allowing it to become a lead weight around your neck. After his death, after Kushina's, Kakashi supposes there wasn't anyone left to remind him of that. It's a small thing, just a few words spoken before a memorial, and in the scheme of things, it's perhaps little wonder that Kakashi forgot, and yet, he wonders at Kurama just a little. Kurama loves so deeply, and Kakashi has seen evidence of it with Naruto and the other Jinchuriki children, with the scattered mentions of the best friend who sent him back in time and died to do it. Devotion, Kakashi thinks, and the word is strong, but he doesn't feel like he's overstating things. Devotion to a person, a memory, a cause, bound up with determination and that rough, ragged-edged love that appears so much like desperation from the outside. And maybe it is. Kurama has lost absolutely everything once already. Kakashi suffered the same and shut himself down, locked all his bits of humanity away. But Kurama? Kurama did the opposite, didn't he? He was so desperate to find something to hang on to that he took Naruto, took Gaara and Fu and Yugito, ran to the ends of the elemental countries to keep them safe from anyone that might think to harm them. And he did hang on to them, wrapped them up in love and kindness left to him by a dead man taught to himself after an existence of destruction and hatred, and being a calamity that people the world over feared for its ferocity and mercilessness. Everything starts with a little boy who was stupid enough to believe that he could make friends with a monster. And the hilarious part? It worked. He took a creature who'd only known hate and fear for a long, long time and reminded him about love. The irony is so thick and stark that Kakashi wants to laugh. He would, but the darkness is heavy and soft, only broken by the lights of the town outside filtering through the mostly covered window. Kurama's breaths are soft and steady, and Kakashi can see his outline beneath the window, sprawled out on his back with an arm tossed over his eyes. Red hair is shaded to plain gray in the darkness, but Kakashi looks at it and thinks of Kushina's, thinks of her vivacity, her brisk kindness, her sharp humor, and it's not a memory of Minato, clear and wrenching the way it is each time he looks at Naruto, but maybe that makes it easier. He loves Kushina too, but thinking of her is quite a lot simpler. She's a happy memory, even when she intersects with Kakashi's darkness. Wise, he thinks, and it's impossibly amusing that the Biju pretending to be her brother is more like her than anyone Kakashi has ever met. It's not something you can teach, idiot. I learned on my own and taught myself. It's finding someone who's worth learning for. That's the hard part. Someone. Kakashi hasn't thought of another person as being someone to him in years now. He wonders a little drowsily and distantly if this is where the learning could start if he wanted to try. He remembers waiting, the steady constancy of it, unending and unchanging. Remembers a campfire in the darkness, night all around. Achingly familiar when he could bring himself to think about it. Ami just a few minutes from its border with Suna and the outpost there. The mistake of a lifetime ago that he can never quite be certain was really a mistake at all. It's a clear memory, well established. He hasn't known anything else for a long time, hasn't tried to move in any direction. Better to wait, heavy with guilt and regret, desperate for some last bit of repentance that would likely never be accepted. It is therefore something of a surprise to wake up to soft light, filtering in through heavy iron bars. He's on his back, on a futon, a blanket beneath him and a pillow under his head, and he's hungry. There's a tickle in his throat, an itch on the bridge of his nose. the uncomfortable bump of his ponytail under his scalp. He can't remember the last time he felt physical discomfort. With a low groan from the lingering ache in his muscles, Sakamoto levers himself up on his elbows, then pushes all the way up to sit. Leaning forward, he braces his arms on his knees and drags his hands over his face, fighting the fuzziness of chakra-assisted sleep even as he surreptitiously takes in his surroundings. Somewhere underground, he thinks, by the musty earth smell in the air, though it's traced with an edge of chemicals that speaks of a lab nearby. There's a lingering edge of green tea, slightly oversteeped, and clean citrus. Something familiar, though he can't quite place it. The room outside his cell is devoid of anyone else, though a desk cluttered with notes and scrolls implies a frequent occupant. The chair is halfway out, clearly abandoned in a moment of haste or distraction, but the door beyond it is shut tight. A second cell at a right angle to his own is empty, and the cell itself is locked with a seal Sakuma knows is practically impossible to break from the inside. He eyes it for a moment, assessing, and then files that option away for a last resort. He might be able to smash through it, though the veteran shinobi in him laments the lack of finesse. But for the moment, he doesn't even know who's holding him. Or, he thinks a little grimly, pressing a hand against his stomach, why he's alive when he very clearly remembers dying, even remembers lingering like a sad ghost in the space between worlds. There's no doubt his suicide was successful. He knows very well how to drive home a killing blow. But this certainly isn't any afterlife he's ever seen mention of. Not by a long shot. A faint rasp against the stone of his floor draws his attention down to a small shape curled near the bars. A snake, deep blue with a red-tipped tail and a red head, rears back slightly to regard him, and Sakamoto stills, trying to remember if it's a venomous species or not. The coloring makes him want to say yes. Nothing that beautiful is ever entirely harmless. "Here to keep an eye on me?" he asks it, not raising his voice much beyond a murmur. The snake flicks its tongue out at him, then curls away, sliding across the floor and out through the crack beneath the door. Sakamoto watches it go, a touch of concern rising, and pushes the rest of the way to his feet, working the kinks out of his muscles. 6 long steps take him to the bars, and he ghosts a hand through the air a few inches from them, feeling the warning hum of chakra curled around the metal. 12 more steps to the end of the cell, solid rock inscribed with more seals to dampen and absorb chakra, and Sakamoto studies them, looking for weaknesses. There are none that he can find at first glance. Whoever drew these knew very well what they were doing, and there isn't so much as a hesitation in the lines. Not many people practice this kind of fujitsu anymore. Sakamoto can only think of a handful, and even if he's well beyond the time he remembers, he can't imagine the number has grown all that much. Uzushio was the center of learning for the sealing arts. With its destruction, the knowledge is withering, fading. Senju Tobirama knew it because the Nindame was always one to utilize any weapon at hand. But beyond him, few have ever had the precision and dedication required to learn it fully. Maybe it won't be quite as simple as Sakamoto thought to just tear down the seal. The quick, sharp click of footsteps on stone draws his attention away from the markings, and he turns, just as the door opens. The snake is the first in, whoever is behind it, pausing long enough that the reptile can make it through without worry of getting stepped on, and it slithers right up to the table and curls around one of its legs. Sakamoto glances down at it, then back up to the fall of thick black hair against a pale robe, sharp-edged abrasive chakra that weighs like lead, as the figure carefully closes the door. His eyes widen and he reaches for the bars automatically, only just stopping himself from touching them in time. "Orochimaru," he says, mixed relief and delight. "Your timing is perfect. How did Konohanu to send you? There's a 6-point barrier seal. If you could just take it down, we can..." But Orochimaru isn't turning towards him, simply standing at the door, unmoving. Sakamoto has 3 seconds to suffer his confusion, the brief flare of panic that this isn't Konoha's resident Sannin at all, and he's actually mistaken. "Hatake," Orochimaru says evenly, turning at last, and eerie golden eyes catch Sakamoto's bewildered stare. "Any stiffness or lack of response in your limbs?" Clearly, there are pieces of this picture that Sakamo is missing. Likely a lot of them, it seems. He takes half a step back, eyes flickering over Orochimaru, and his gaze lands on the heavy signet ring around Orochimaru's figure. He takes half a step back, eyes flickering over Orochimaru, and his gaze lands on the heavy signet ring around Orochimaru's finger. Not something he's ever seen before, and while Orochimaru has always appeared fond of jewelry, this doesn't seem quite like his usual. "Not that I can tell," he says, and keeps his voice as light as he can. "Let me out and I'll do some stretches. That should make any problems easier to spot." "I'd forgotten," Orochimaru says, stepping close to the bars. There's a faint tilt to his lips that reads as amusement, but somehow that doesn't make Sakamo feel all that much better. "You always played the humble fool so well." The words sting, just a little. Sakamo's last memory of Konoha is hatred and mockery, depression and betrayal, and grief sitting heavy on his shoulders. Fool was perhaps the kindest of things they called him, and humble certainly never factored in. "You're not going to let me out," he says evenly, watching the younger man's face for any shifts. "Is this even in Konoha?" Slyness overtakes amusement, though there's still plenty of that as well on his face. "Konoha and I have parted ways. You of all people should remember how quickly the good nature can turn." Another twist in his chest, small but sharp, and Sakamo lets out a slow breath. "My dishonor has nothing to do with..." "On the contrary, Hatake, it has everything to do with this." Orochimaru's eyes narrow and he leans forward, just barely beyond the range of the seal. "I am a powerful man, and you will never meet anyone who disagrees. My former teammates are strong as well. But your fame outpaces the Densetsu no Sanin's. You were Konoha's very best. The Second Shinobi War lasted years, and you were the village's single greatest asset throughout it. And then, in the very last moment, you made one mistake, following the tenets of a village built on teamwork and loyalty, and they cast you out for it." A breath, short and edged with an angry hiss, and Orochimaru turns away in a swirl of pale cloth and dark hair. Overdramatic as ever, Sakamo thinks, with a part of his brain not numb and frozen. "You were a cautionary tale, Hatake," Orochimaru says, not looking at him. "You were a warning I should have heeded but didn't. Past service comes to nothing. Orders come to nothing. There is no room for explanation, no space for mistakes, no thought given to the outcasts and the useful undesirables." He laughs low and unnerving and presses a hand over his face. "Tell me, don't you feel the same?" "I have never given Konoha any less than my full loyalty," Sakamo says, as steady as he can manage, but for one fraction of a heartbeat, he can feel the press of a blade against his stomach, the feel of flesh giving way to a spill of blood. For one instant, he can remember the mocking jeers when he failed a simple mission weeks after the Suna mission ended in disaster, and the way Kakashi had turned his face away ashamed. This time, when Orochimaru turns back to face him, all humor has vanished from his face, replaced with the stirrings of a dark anger Sakamo has only ever seen from him on the battlefield. "Wrong," Orochimaru says, as silken as a dagger sliding into his back. "You gave your comrade your loyalty even over the good of the village." When Sakamo stiffens, he smiles, entirely unamused. "Precisely. Loyalty to your teammates was returned with ridicule, near exile. You were faithful to them and they betrayed you. But now I work for a world without lies, a world where only truth and peace exist. Will you help create it? Your strength and will would be invaluable to us." His fingers trail along the bars, light and deft, tracing the outline of a seal Sakamo has seen before. Sakamo follows their path for a moment and doesn't look up as he says, "You're working for someone? I never imagined you as another person's pawn, Orochimaru." The words earn him a bitter laugh. "Clearly, Hatake, you know nothing about me. I am a dangerous, convenient pawn, and so many have made use of me. What's one more in the end? Confusing, Sakamo answers, and when Orochimaru casts him a veiled, faintly weary glance, he manages a smile as genuine as he can possibly make it. A step forward brings him right across from Orochimaru, and he reaches out, mirroring his hand in the air. I'll remember you, Orochimaru. During the war at After, Jiraiya and Tsunade, they abandoned the village with no indication they would ever return. But you were always there, always working. What happened to the man who was responsible for half of our advancements, for so many of our victories? Orochimaru doesn't look away from his face, but Sakamo can't read more than the basic outline of his emotions. Manipulation, entreaty, an attempt at understanding in preparation to cut down the opponent in this argument. It's the first step of turning an enemy against their own cause. Not a system that Sakamo had ever thought to use on a comrade before, and he's doubtful of its success against a genius of Orochimaru's level. Even so, nothing has ever been lost by trying. That man, Orochimaru says quietly, derisively. He stepped off a path, and the jaws of reality snapped him up and devoured him. Something you should be very familiar with, Hatake. After all, it killed you in the end, did it not? Sakamo sucks in a breath not quite started enough to step back, but from the grim, thin-lipped smile Orochimaru gives him, it's all too clear to tell. Orochimaru turns, and this time, when he crosses the room, his steps are swift and unhesitating. I will do you the disservice of attempting to convert you to our plans again, Hatake. It fails to matter in the end. In 7 days, you'll follow Madara's orders whether you want to or not. His hand hesitates on the latch of the door, and without looking back, he says quietly, venomously, Konoha may as well have held the blade that killed you. Will you really give your life for them again, White Fang? The door falls shut behind him with a heavy thud, and there's the sound of a bolt sliding home. Sakamo breathes in, careful and controlled, and closes his eyes. Well, a light feminine voice says, unexpected enough to make him jump. He's gotten even creepier, you know. The other cell isn't empty at all, thought Sakamo can see at a glance. Why, he thought it was. There's a woman perched on a tiny stone ledge near the ceiling, and only now that her legs are dangling down is she easy to spot. A waterfall of red hair, at least ankle length, is even more obvious. You've met? Sakamo asks, trying to place her face. With a rude snort, the woman, clearly a Kunoichi, drops down to the floor and straightens, smacking her fist against the seal that mirrors Sakamo's. It flares with a sharp crackle, and she winces, drawing her hand back to study the raw skin. Orochimaru's of Konoha. Of course we met. I think you do, though I was a lot shorter. The red hair is what gives it away. Uzumaki, he realizes with surprise, because last he remembered she was barely even a Genin, for all that she held the Kyuubi inside of her. Uzumaki Kushina grins at him. Nice to see you again, Hatake, especially since we're both supposed to be dead. Wanna help me bust out of this joint? I'm in the mood for an explosion or two. Sakamo laughs a little, entirely despite himself, and looks down at the air where Orochimaru traced that seal. It means something, he's sure of it. Orochimaru's not the type for meaningless fidgeting. Well, there's space enough to figure it out right now. We've got a week, he says, and Kushina's grin is as vicious as the beast she hosted. All the time in the world, you know, she answers, bright and wicked, and Sakamo smiles back.